Hey, well, I'm Simon Bridges, of course, CEO of the Auckland Business Chamber, and it's great to be back for another weekly Business Insights show as part of our Business Insights series. I'm really delighted to have a good pal of mine, Denis Gianoutsos. Denis is, look, many things. He's a speaker, facilitator, an executive coach, podcaster, a bit of a writer, and a good guy. And we were having a chat and talking about some of the things he's been doing. And I said, hey, have I got a deal for you? Come along for free and talk to me on as part of the series and give us a bit of insight. And so that's what he's doing. Today, Jen's going to talk to us a bit about adapting and thriving in a changing world. And look, I'm sure we'll all agree. If there's one thing that's true, it's a very complex, changing world that we live in. So, Denis, great to have you. Looking forward to your insights, and I'll follow up at the end with a few questions. And as I say, we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Hey Simon, thank you for having me here. It's great to be here with you. And I'm just going to be sharing some slides with the people watching this webinar because it's a really important kind of topic we're going to be talking about, which is about adapting and thriving in a changing world. Most leaders today, most business owners in that, are trying to survive as a leader, let alone thrive as a leader. So we're going to be talking about that. So I'm going to start to share some of my slides. Okay, you should see some slides there. And what we're talking about here is that today's leaders are finding it quite difficult, and they're going, well, what can I do? How can I move? How can I grow as a leader? There's one thing to go through change. There's another thing for us to actually lead that change at the same time. Because change, let's be honest, is not easy at any time. And there's a lot of people that want change, but there's a lot of people who don't want to go through change themselves. And so they tend to sort of back off a little bit about it. Hey, just a little bit about my background. I've worked in a global role with Hewlett-Packard where I was developing their high-performing executives, leaders, and teams and having a great time doing it. But a few years ago, my voice started to change. And what we noticed, it became quite hoarse and raspy. And we were like, what's going on? And if you think about a motivational guy called Tony Robbins, he's got quite a hoarse and raspy voice. My voice was worse than that. Long story short, we found a tumor on my left vocal cord, and we thought, what the heck's going on here? So I thought, life's over, job's over, had it removed, came back as being benign, and I'm like, cool, I've been given a second chance of life. Let's go out and do something. But that whole thing was a change process that I went through, and it was really quite interesting to have that kind of voice journey. But Simon, you know, when you and I and the rest of the world, we went into lockdown just over 4 years ago, well, around about 4 years ago. I had a lot of gigs cancelled and wasn't able to do things. So then what I decided to do was to help my voice be heard, but also interview some people around the world and also have our listeners on my podcast that I launched called Leadership is Changing. And what the good thing about that is that Leadership is Changing is quite interesting in the sense that I've got over 560 episodes now, just over 4 years or around 4 years' time. It's been the top 5 leadership podcasts globally, but I get the opportunity to interview leaders around the world, and there tends to be common themes that keep coming out. And so for those who are watching this webinar, at the end here, I've got a free gift for them to actually just share some of those common themes. We've created a guide that's got the 10 common themes and 42 kind of lessons or strategic insights underneath those themes as well. So that's going to be free for them to check it out later on too. All right, so here's an interesting question. What does it mean to be a leader in today's world? And when I ask a lot of leaders that kind of question, I get all sorts of kind of different answers. And for a lot of them, it's more about we've got a whole lot of things we have to handle all at once. And there seems to be more change on top of change on top of change, so much so that for a lot of them, they start to become overwhelmed. You know what it's like. We are living in a fast-paced, ever-changing world. Technology's driving it, data, social, business. There's just so much stuff happening for us all at the moment. And as I said earlier on, how do you succeed as a leader in that fast-paced, ever-changing world? How do you go from surviving as a leader to thriving as a leader? And if you're not changing quick enough, and we've seen this in many businesses around the world, that if they don't change quick enough, they become irrelevant and they get left behind. Some of them are not even around nowadays. And it's the same about leadership as well. If we're not changing quick enough, we also too are going to be left behind. So the thing here is that I'm finding that it's really important that we as leaders, how we show up really matters. In fact, some people aren't really nice to work with, and some of them are not even nice to live with either, because they're going home overwhelmed. They're still on, as I call it, or they've still got lots they're thinking about their deadlines and initiatives and a whole lot of things to think about. So there is loads of change for them, and they're finding it very difficult to work through. Now, practically every human endeavor requires leadership. Zig Ziglar was one of the world's best sales trainers around and speakers in the world. And one thing he said was that even a two-car parade can get fouled up if they don't know who's going to lead. So once you do know who's going to lead, the critical thing then is knowing how to lead, which is really important. So I want to share with some things about some of these common themes that are coming out of these interviews with, close to over 300 people, well, close to 300 people that I've actually interviewed on the podcast and leaders that I get to work with around the world. One of the words is around connect. Lots of people can communicate, but they can't connect with the audience. There's something that's missing. They're like a talking head up front, and people are going like, what? What are you going on about? Here's a good example is that they don't tend to take people on the journey. A lot of organizations tend to sort of set their strategy, but they don't tend to sort of help people understand it. They go, here it is, go out there and do it. Everyone goes, what? I don't understand it. And it's because they haven't been involved in the strategy, or it hasn't been communicated and connected in a way that it's relatable for people. So one thing for leaders to do to be able to cope in a world is to be able to connect with people more and actually take people on the journey. The next thing I would say is about adapting or adapt. Now, for all of us, we need a lot of time to adapt. And when we do, and we've learned something new, it tends to have already changed or it's already become out of date. And the next thing is coming along. So that ability to be able to adapt and adapt quickly is important. We've seen organizations and leaders, even in sporting teams, if they can adapt real quickly, that's where they have the ability to take control and move forward. The other thing is we have to adapt and change if we don't want to become irrelevant and be left behind as a leader. We know that there's one thing that is constant in the world today, and that is change. Change is always happening. And if we are not changing, we're standing still, we're actually going to go backwards. Why? Because everything else in the world is moving at a rapid rate. And so the important thing is that we need to adapt and change to stay relevant. Actually, there's quite a lot of leaders out there today who are fearful of that, of becoming irrelevant and being left behind. And so one thing we need to do is think about how do we stay on top of the cutting edge, or in front of the cutting edge, or in front of the curve, I should say, to be able to allow us to move forward and do things that we might need to do to be successful in business and in leadership. One area is around having the right mindset. It's about the above the line, below the line thinking. I always talk about that the mindset or attitude is a 6-inch gap. It's those 6 inches between your ears, right? And so the positive self-talk and the people that you hang around, the material that you sort of consume on an ongoing basis is really what's going to be important for you to have the right mindset. Some days it's not easy for leaders. And so how do they dig deep, or how do they put things in perspective? Because people are looking at them to be a rock, and they're looking at them to lead the front, and that's what they need to do. So they have got to be in the right mindset, which is important. My question here would be, how do you catch yourself going below that line with your attitude, and what do you do to bring yourself back again? That's going to be the important thing for a lot of people. The next thing is, what I'm hearing is from a lot of people that I'm interviewing on these podcasts is they're looking for leaders to be authentic and real. And I'll talk about real in a minute, but people are looking for authentic leaders because they can see right through a leader that's not authentic. They've got this thing out there, a radar. They can pick up whether somebody's authentic or not. In our country and in Australia, we're not afraid to call them out on not being authentic, and we tend to do that. But if you're going to be present with people and be authentic with people, the one thing you need to do is probably make sure you are present with them fully, actively listening to what they're saying, whether it be staff, customers, your family at home. It's really important. An organization brought me in one day to speak to that team around wellness, and it was more about them going on their Christmas break. It was just before Christmas, When they go on Christmas, New Year break, how do they actually turn off that phone, their laptops, even though the company's going to be down for 2 weeks, closed? They need to turn off and be present with the family because it's time for them to recharge their batteries. And it's the same thing for us every night if we go home. Now, for a lot of this, it's easy for me to say, but not always easy to do. But the important thing is that we can turn off and be present. It's really going to help us be authentic. The real piece is where people want to see the human side of you as well. And I think a lot of leaders today hide behind a mask. I'm not talking about the COVID mask. I'm talking about the mask of the title of management or leadership. People hide behind it, and people want to see the real person. They want to see and understand you as a leader, which is important. Here's another one which is coming up a lot, which is about being accountable. We've seen it being as one of the most critical business tools needed for businesses to be successful, but it's not being done effectively. People aren't holding themselves or their peers or their teams or their organizations accountable enough. And so another example could be, how does a leadership team behave with each other in meetings and so forth, and the way that they work together? Are they committed to doing things, or do they just say things and then don't actually follow up? Here's an example as well, is that you go to meetings and we talk about things and we go away and come back in 2 weeks' time and we talk about the same things again, and have those things been done? No. Okay, we got to go away and do it. We go away, come back another 2 weeks, same stuff, right? And it's just because people aren't being held accountable enough. Here's a really cool word: consistency. Now, going from average to excellence, there's a key word, and it's this: it's consistency. So my question is how consistent are you in what you do on a daily basis? There was a guy I worked with in the UK. His name was David. He was married with 2 kids, and he had 80+ hour weeks that he was working. David felt he was losing control and he lacked confidence. His boss wanted him to take over his job, and he was like, I can't even do my own job in 80 hours. How can I do another job in 100 hours? But get this, Simon, the guy felt guilty every Thursday at 4 o'clock to leave the office to go and watch his kids swim for 1 hour. He felt guilty. There's a lot of people like that who feel guilty, even though they're doing 80+ hour weeks. And so I worked with him on certain things. We brought his hours down to 50-hour weeks, but he got clarity. His presence as an executive was a lot stronger, and his productivity went through the roof. And so it's about how do you do that, and it's about doing things on a consistent basis and helping you understand where you need to be focusing on that consistent basis as well. The next word that sort of keeps coming up a topic is around excellence, is about your executive presence or your leadership presence. How do you hold yourself? How do you come across to people? My question to a lot of people would be, how do you want to be known as a leader? That's the key, right? And what's your brand as a leader? Execution is one thing that's really important in getting things done, but also about legacy. It's about building your legacy, but also our future leaders as well, and building that legacy too. So that all comes under that sort of topic of excellence. Bold. I'm sure there's somebody watching this right now who probably isn't doing something that they know that they should be doing. Why? Because they're not bold enough, or they're not having enough courage to do it. And so I'm going to talk about these two words, but bold is where you do things that you probably wouldn't normally do. And that's the one thing that you're probably putting off, right? And so is it that calling a client that you're not calling, or you haven't called for a while? Is it having that discussion? Is it actually going out there and making a decision and going forward with something and being quite bold with it, not knowing what the outcome might be? So if you can encourage yourself and your teams to be bold, then that's a great thing. But first of all, you're going to have to demo it or show it to the team first. And as I said before, courage is another one too, right? It was about stepping up. It's about asking that question or putting your hand up, something you've been putting off. Here's an example. You've been sitting in a meeting and you want to ask that question, but you don't want to come across as being dumb. And so you sort of hold back a bit. And about 2 minutes later, somebody else asked that question in the room, and everyone goes, wow, what an awesome question. You go, damn, I wished I could ask that. Or I should have asked that question. Or there's that one statement you want to say, but you haven't said it. And it could be something that could actually change the organization, the leadership, and everything. So I'm going to really encourage people to have courage to actually do something that they've been putting off, and ask that question, put your hand up, do something. That's going to be really important. No one wants to work for a knuckle dragger. What do I mean by that? Somebody who lacks energy, somebody who's just like, oh, it's a bit doom and gloom. Massive energy, and everything you do is what we need to do as leaders to be able to lead, change, adapt, and thrive in this changing world. If you bring along passion, that's great. But you know what? You've got to be able to keep that energy up as well. So how do you do that? So I think one thing that's really important for us to do as leaders is to actually make sure that we're looking after ourselves well. And it's about sleeping, having enough sleep, drinking enough water throughout the day, exercising, meditating, and eating well. You know, and I know that a lot of people tend to around 3 o'clock in the afternoon reach for those chocolates, the sweets, the chippies, and things like that. Why? Because they need that hit to take them up to have more energy again. And then when they go home, they're already flatlining in the energy levels. And then they're having to be mum, dad, partner, all sorts of brother, sister, things like that, right? And so they're having another role to fulfill. And sometimes it's very hard for them to be able to do both too. So bring heaps of energy to whatever you're doing, which is great. This next word that I'm going to share with you is an interesting one because I think a lot of leaders don't do this well enough, and that is networking. And it's probably one thing that you probably need to do. This is one thing I'm going to say to all of you right now. That is for you to be actually adaptive and thriving as a leader in a changing world, is that build it before you need it. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get this message. I'm trying to connect with a person for 2 years. They're too busy. Then all of a sudden they send me a message. G'day, mate. How you going? I'm like, what are they after here? So it's about building it before you need it. There was a director that I was working with, and their vice president, senior vice president, and executive vice president were all made. They merged two business units together, and the three of them gone overnight. His whole circle of influence, his network, were gone within one night. And so the important thing here is to build a network within the organization across different business units, build it inside the industry, and then also outside the industry. I think it's very important for us to do. Some people want to go to networking events, but they're a little bit afraid to do so. They feel a little bit uncomfortable. Guess what? We all do. We all feel a little bit uncomfortable. So you're in amongst a great bunch of people who are all feeling that. Now, if you're going to go along and you're like a little dog with your tongue hanging out to try and get the bone because you're trying to sell something to someone, it isn't going to work. What you need to do is just go in there, sow the seed, build the relationships, get to know the other person, listen to what they're saying, and then you can always take it offline afterwards for a coffee somewhere else if you're wanting to. But it's not having to try and go out there and meet everybody in the network. Look for 3 or 4 or 5 people and talk with them as well. This is an interesting one. For a lot of us, we drive to work or we drive somewhere, and when we get there, we think, how did I just get here? Because we've done things on subconscious kind of mode, right? So the important thing here would be, it's what I call being on autopilot. I think a lot of leaders are going to work every single day, day in, day out, doing the exactly same thing. Every single month, that salary is just going pop into their account. For business owners, you're going doing things day in, day out. But what's really important, we find that we're on autopilot. We've got to be what we call being deliberate. If you can be more deliberate in what you do, that's the key. And if you can do that, that's going to really help you take control of the cockpit in your business, in your organization, and with your leadership team. To do that, though, you need 3 key words. You've got to be disciplined, focused, and being consistent to allow you to actually pay major attention for you to go from autopilot to being that deliberate leader as well. Now, Simon, all of this is really nice that we're talking about and great cool words and so forth, but it means nothing until you take some action. And taking action is really important. People need to take and do something with what we actually are talking about today, because nothing happens until you take massive action. Things don't happen if you take a red, blue, green, black pill. It just doesn't happen. Go, ta-da, it's all done. It takes work, but it also takes massive action to do things. This is what I'm going to really challenge people with on this call today, or the webinar and so forth, is that don't wait for change to come to you. Be the change. Drive it. Make it happen. Go out there and do things, which is very important indeed. Hey, I'm going to just finish off soon by sharing a story about this red car. But before I do that, people watching this webinar may want to get in touch with me, but there is the Apple and Spotify QR codes that you can go to check out my podcast called Leadership is Changing. So that's all good. But also I said there was a free gift for people today too. With interviewing well over 200, going close to 300 leaders. It's an executive guide really featuring the 10 key themes that are coming out with 42 strategic insights from these different worldwide leaders, which is pretty cool. So the story, what is this all about? Well, the red car story was a business owner he believed that setting goals was really important. He needed to adapt and thrive in that changing world that he needed to do. But one of his rewards was to actually buy a red Ford Mustang. And so what he did is he believed in the fact that whatever you visualize is going to really help you. So he found in a magazine a picture of a red Ford Mustang, like the one in the picture here. And he put it on the back of his front door in his house. Every morning when he was leaving at 6 a.m., he would look at the picture. Every night when he came home at 7 p.m., he would look at the picture. And then he did that day in and day out. And for 18 months, he did that. And his business went so well, even though it was in a changing world, dynamic and so much being done and so much being thrown at him, he succeeded. And he succeeded because he had disciplined focus and consistency. And so he went off to the Ford dealership to go and buy the car. And when he walked in there, he could smell that brand new car smell. And he thought, wow. But over in the one corner was a black version, and on the other corner was a green version, but there was no red car. Mm-hmm. And he thought, huh. So the salesman came up and talked to him, and he said to him, what are you looking for? And he says, and he explained the whole story. And the guy goes, well, we don't actually have a red one. And I don't know if they're manufacturing anymore at the moment. He goes off, he calls Ford, comes back and says, okay, got some good news and some bad news. Bad news is that they're not manufacturing any more red cars for 24 months. The good news, because you've got cash and you're willing to buy today, I've been given the okay to give you a 30% discount on the black one or the green one if you want to buy it today. He went, nah, I worked really hard. There was a lot going on. No, I really want the red one. So he started to walk. The salesman said, sir, wait. I've got an idea. Upstairs in storage, we've got a red one. It's a little bit dented and a little bit dusty, but it's red. Worthwhile having a look. He goes, okay, let's go. Goes upstairs. There it is. So as he turned around the corner, there was the beautiful red Ford Mustang car. And they negotiated on the price and he started to drive it home. He could still smell, still had that brand new leather smell. As he was driving home, he was thinking about all the things he went through, all those things that he did to get there. Drove it into his street, into his garage, got out, locked it, beep, beep, jumped, stepped back, looked at it, and went back inside of his house. And he did the same thing that he's done for the last 18 months. He looked at the car in the back of the door. The car in that picture was the same car sitting in his garage now, number plate and all. You see, what they did is that was the car that they used in the marketing. And that was the car that they had in the magazines. The moral of the story is this. Us as leaders, whatever you're wanting in life, whatever you're wanting in business, if you focus on that one thing, you go out there and you work hard on what you're wanting to do and keep that vision, that focus in front of you, you can then adapt, you can then thrive in a changing world and be successful as a leader today. Simon, I'm going to hand it back to you, and thank you for having me on today's webinar.
Hey, fantastic, Dennis. It's been really fantastic listening to you. I mean, there's a lot there, but one of the things that occurs to me is this leadership issue in today's world. A lot of it's not the kind of the hard stuff. A lot of it's, what some of us might call soft or social skill. It's one of your slides, how you show up as a leader matters. So it's not just your IQ. It took me too long to work this out. It's often your EQ, right? I used to think, well, if I'm doing what's required, we're getting the outcome we need, everyone just needs to come along for the ride and stop, annoying me. But of course, it's not like that. It's how as well as, what. So, I mean, you agree with that? And is that your experience?
Yeah, it is. I think the soft skill is actually, there's an episode I've done with Phil Holden, actually, who's one of the chairmen of some of the boards we've got in New Zealand. He talked about soft skill versus hard skill. It's actually a hard skill, right? It's actually harder than what people think. But but a lot of people sort of leave that to the side. They don't sort of tend to look at it and focus on it. And those who are very successful as leaders in whatever field you want to talk about, they are very good at the IQ and the EQ. They understand it. They work at it. But does it come to them overnight? No. They have to work at it and they have to grow with it too, right? Do they get it perfect at the first? No. And so that's where we tend to learn. And I think, Simon, what happens here is that for a lot of us, not just leaders, but also our teams, we tend to, as leaders, steal a learning experience away from people. And it's something that I think is missing. What do I mean by this? If you and I are walking down the road and we're going to see the latest Superman movie, and we see someone we know, and they go, "Where are you two going?" "We're going down to see this movie." "Oh, look out for this, this, and this," and they start to tell us all about the movie. And so their IQ and EQ is they're not even there at the moment, and they're just thinking about themselves. So they go off and they leave us, and they've stolen that experience away from us. Same for us as leaders. If we're not working with people to help them understand things, we are stealing the learning experience away from them. So if we've got the IQ and the EQ and the understanding and the soft skills to help people go along the actual process and the journey, then they become stronger leaders. That's why you and I and others are in positions we are in today, because we had leaders who actually had those kind of skills who actually helped us develop as well.
Absolutely. I think, in a sort of a similar category, one of the things that really struck me about what you said is, because we have this view in society, I think, maybe more amongst men than women, dare I say it, but we've got to work 100 hours or 80 hours and feel guilty going to your child's swimming lesson. I've got tonight my daughter's school picnic, actually. So you've got to do these things. They're really important. Someone said to me that I respect and I like, thought it was a good, you've got to be, and again, I didn't used to be very good at this. I think I'm better, though it's still a work in progress, as present at home as you are at work, mentally. And you'll be much more recharged if you do that. And secondly, decide to help you with this, a tool I sort of decide. I don't always get it perfect, but I'm better than I used to be. Decide at the start of the day when you're going to leave at the end of the day, right? Because actually you'll end up being more productive, more efficient, and have that energy that you also spoke of. Again, you agree with those sort of propositions?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of it comes down to our intent. So when we're talking about how the leader shows up, it's our intent, what we're setting as an intent, our intent for the day. When we go to a meeting, our intent for that meeting too, where we want out of it. When we're going home, our intent, what we're wanting to do there as well. And I think it's not just being there mentally. I think it's physically, mentally, and emotionally, the three of them. If we can be there and have our intent, that's what we're looking for. As you say, we're human beings. We don't always get it right. It's not perfect every single night, and nor should it be. It's just the way we are. But the thing is, there's it's swung too much the other way, whereby people are just still stuck on, on their phone or with a laptop and things like that, and they're not present even in the conversations, which is sad to see. So yeah.
Absolutely. I liked, and I suppose this is a little plug for the chamber, but I liked what you said about networking. I mean, we do a heap of events. Build it before you need it. That's certainly been true in my, professional and business life, really. It's those friends. It is a bit, whether it should be, but it is a bit, who you know, not what you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes. So, your networks will really help you. We've got great Business After Five series. $20, you'll hear a great speaker, but you'll also, meet with another 100 or so business people, and you just don't know what you'll get out of that connection, which is, is really valuable for you, your life, and what you're trying to do. I also like that point, in the end, it's all good stuff, but it's just nice words unless you take action. And so I'm sure that people, and listening to you, Denis, take one thing that you might be able to change or change up or do better from what Denis has said. Final comment from me. Look, it wasn't a red Mustang. Mine's a silver Aston Martin. Okay, Denis. So that's probably just the James Bond complex or something from my youth. But one day it is going to happen, and I may even take you for a ride if you're lucky. Look, I think just finally, let's do it again. I'm sure you've got more in you with the work you do. It'd be really good to get you back on and talk about some other themes and thoughts you might have that'll be practical input for our many thousands of SME businesses.
Yeah, I'd love to. It'd be great. Happy to do it. And also, if there's anything I can do to help people, feel free to reach out to me. But it's been a real pleasure. Thank you, Simon.
And Dennis, of course, is very easy to get hold of. I know we connect a bit on LinkedIn, it's one place, but there's the website and the various other links that have been put up for you. So don't resist. Get out and talk to Dennis if he might be of assistance to you. Well, that's another Business Insights show for the week. And yeah, as I say, we hope you're all going well. And Dennis, we'll talk to you again.